My brother demanded I invest my entire inheritance in his cryptocurrency scheme and threatened to destroy my marriage when I refused. He hacked my accounts, drained everything, and framed me for domestic violence to take my wife. The police officer's hand was on his weapon when I opened the door at 3 a.m. Behind him, 2 more officers stood on my front lawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Mr. Cameron Hartley? That's me. Is something wrong? We received a 911 call from this address. Your wife reported that you assaulted her, that you've been physically abusive and she's afraid for her life. My brain couldn't process the words. My wife? Nina. Where is she? Inside, sir. She's with the female officer. We need you to step outside. I'd been asleep 20 minutes ago. Nina had been next to me in bed, her breathing steady and peaceful. We'd gone to bed after watching a movie, everything normal, everything fine. And now police were telling me she'd called 911 to report that I'd hit her. This doesn't make sense. I haven't touched her. I would never. Sir, I need you to step outside. Now. I'd stepped onto the porch in my pajamas, barefoot, while officers entered my house. Through the window, I'd seen Nina in the living room talking to a female officer. She'd been crying, actually crying. But when she'd glanced toward the window and seen me looking, something had flickered across her face. Not fear, not relief. Something else. Something I'd never seen before. Calculation. That's when I'd understood. This wasn't real. Nina hadn't called the police because I'd hurt her. Someone had gotten to her. Someone had convinced her to do this. And I knew exactly who. My brother Damien had been in our house yesterday afternoon. He'd made his final demand about the inheritance. He'd threatened to destroy my marriage if I didn't give him the money. And when I'd refused, he'd smiled and said, "You're going to regret this, Cameron. Everything you love is about to disappear." I'd thought he meant he'd spread lies. Tell people I was a bad husband. Maybe try to turn Nina against me with manipulation. I hadn't imagined this. Hadn't thought he'd be capable of orchestrating a false domestic violence accusation. But here I was, being handcuffed on my own front porch while my wife cried to police about abuse that had never happened. The inheritance had arrived 6 months ago. $280,000 from our grandfather's estate split evenly between Damien and me. Grandpa Leon had been a careful man who'd saved his whole life, invested wisely, and died at 92 with a modest fortune. The will had specified equal distribution between his 2 grandsons. I'd put mine in a high-yield savings account, planning to use it as a down payment on a house. Nina and I had been renting for 3 years, and the inheritance meant we could finally buy. Could finally start the family we'd been planning. Could finally have stability. Damien had other plans. He'd shown up at our apartment the day after the inheritance cleared, carrying his laptop and wearing the manic expression I'd learned to recognize. The expression that meant he'd found a new scheme, a new way to get rich quick, a new opportunity that would change everything. Cameron, man, you need to see this. He'd opened his laptop on our kitchen table, pulled up charts that looked like electrocardiogram readouts. Lines going up and down in sharp peaks and valleys, numbers that meant nothing to me, technical terms I didn't understand. This is CryptoPulse. It's a new coin that's going to explode. I got in early during the pre-sale, and I'm already up 300%. 300% in what, 2 weeks? Damien had been breathless. And it's going to keep going. The developers are launching new features next month. Partnerships with major platforms. This is the next Bitcoin, Cameron. This is our chance. I'd looked at the charts, seen the numbers, felt the familiar mix of skepticism and exhaustion that came with every one of Damien's pitches. How much have you invested? Everything. My entire inheritance. All $280,000, plus another $100,000 I borrowed. My stomach had dropped. You borrowed $100,000 to invest in cryptocurrency? Damien had waved his hand dismissively. It's not cryptocurrency, it's CryptoPulse. It's completely different. It has utility. It has real-world applications. The white paper explains everything, and the returns are insane. I'm going to turn 400,000 into 4 million. Maybe more. What's the utility? What does it actually do? The details don't matter. What matters is that it's going up, and if you get in now, you can ride the wave with me. We can both be millionaires by the end of the year. I'd closed his laptop. Damien, this sounds like a scam. Cryptocurrency is volatile. Most of these coins are pump and dump schemes. You could lose everything. I'm not going to lose everything. I've done the research. I'm in the Discord. I talk to the developers every day. This is legitimate. Then invest your own money. Don't try to convince me to risk mine. I already invested my own money. Damien's expression had shifted. Now I need you to invest yours. We're brothers. We're supposed to help each other succeed. When one of us wins, we both win. I'm not investing my inheritance in your cryptocurrency. Nina and I are buying a house. Nina had been at work during this conversation, but Damien had looked toward our bedroom like he could see her through the walls. Does Nina know about this opportunity? Because I bet if I explained it to her, she'd understand. She'd see the potential. I bet she'd want you to invest. Nina trusts my judgment, and my judgment is no. Damien had stood up, closed his laptop. You're making a mistake, a huge mistake. When CryptoPulse hits $10 a coin and I'm driving a Lambo while you're still renting, you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember that your brother tried to help you, and you chose poverty. I'd walked him to the door. If it works out, I'm happy for you, but I'm not risking my future on speculation. Damien had paused on the threshold. Your future. Right. Because you have such a great future planned. Working your middle management job, saving pennies, buying a house in the suburbs, living the same boring life as everyone else. Some of us want more than that, Cameron. Some of us have vision. I'd closed the door on him, tried to forget the conversation, but Damien hadn't forgotten. He'd come back a week later, then 2 weeks later, then every few days, each time with new charts, new projections, new reasons why I needed to invest, each time more insistent, more desperate. The coin wasn't performing the way he'd expected. He'd mentioned that in passing during the 4th visit. Just a temporary dip. Whales manipulating the market. It would recover. It would moon. I just needed to be patient. But I'd Googled CryptoPulse after he'd left, found warnings on investment forums, found testimonials from people who'd lost their savings, found analysis from financial experts calling it a textbook Ponzi scheme. The developers were anonymous. The white paper was plagiarized. The partnerships were fabricated. Damien had invested $400,000 in a scam, and now he was trying to drag me down with him. The 5th visit had been different. Damien had brought Nina flowers, had complimented her dress, had asked about her work with an interest he'd never shown before. Nina was a graphic designer, talented and successful, and Damien had spent 30 minutes asking about her projects, her clients, her creative process. He'd been charming, the version of Damien that showed up when he wanted something, the charismatic manipulator who could make you believe anything. After he'd left, Nina had said, "Your brother is actually really sweet when he wants to be. He seems like he's been through a lot." I'd felt the first flutter of unease. What did he talk to you about? Just life, his struggles, how hard it's been since his divorce. He mentioned he's been trying to rebuild his finances, but you won't help him. That's not what's happening. He's in a bad investment, and he wants me to join him so he won't be alone in the loss. Nina had frowned. That's not what he said. He said he found an incredible opportunity and wants to include you, but you're being stubborn. What opportunity? Cryptocurrency, I'd said. He wants my entire inheritance, wants me to risk everything we've been saving for a house on some coin that's probably a scam. Nina had gone quiet. Then, did you look into it? Or are you just assuming it's a scam? I looked into it. It's a scam. Multiple sources confirm it. But did you talk to Damien about those sources? Give him a chance to explain? Or did you just decide you're smarter than him? The words had stung. Nina had never taken Damien's side before, had always been wary of him, had seen through his manipulations, but something had shifted. Damien had planted seeds during his visit, and they were already growing. The 6th visit had been worse. Damien had brought lunch, expensive takeout from Nina's favorite restaurant, had stayed for 3 hours, talking to her while I was in the home office working. When I'd emerged, they'd been laughing together. Nina had looked happier than I'd seen her in weeks. Damien had looked at me with triumph in his eyes. Cameron, Nina and I were just talking about investment strategies. She's really smart about this stuff, has some great insights. We're not investing in your cryptocurrency, I'd said. Damien had smiled. I wasn't asking you to. I was just having a conversation with my sister-in-law. Is that not allowed? The 7th visit had been when everything had changed. Damien had come over when Nina was home alone. I'd been at the office trying to finish a presentation. I'd come home to find them sitting close on the couch, Damien's laptop open between them, Nina looking at charts with genuine interest. What's going on? Damien was showing me CryptoPulse. Cameron, it's actually really interesting. The technology behind it is innovative. I'd felt something cold in my chest. Nina, we talked about this. It's a scam. Damien says you never actually researched it, just read hit pieces from people who don't understand crypto. I researched it extensively. Every legitimate financial expert says it's a Ponzi scheme. Damien had stood, put his hand on Nina's shoulder. A gesture too familiar, too proprietary. Maybe Nina should make her own decisions about investments. She's not a child who needs you to think for her. I'd looked at Nina, waiting for her to tell Damien to leave, to defend our marriage, to remember that we made financial decisions together. Instead, she'd said, Cameron, I think we should at least consider it. Just hear him out. No, absolutely not. We're not having this conversation. Damien had closed his laptop. See, Nina? This is what I was talking about. He's controlling. Won't even let you have an opinion. I'd seen red. Get out. What? Get out of my house. Now. Damien had smiled. That's a bit dramatic. We're just talking. You're manipulating my wife, trying to turn her against me so you can steal our inheritance. This isn't about helping us. This is about you needing to recoup your losses, and it's pathetic. The smile had dropped. Damien had looked at Nina. You see how he talks to me? His own brother? You deserve better than this, Nina. Cameron had stepped between them. Get out. Damien had left, but not before whispering something to Nina that I couldn't hear, something that made her blush and look away. That night, Nina and I had fought for the first time in our marriage. Really fought. She'd accused me of being controlling, dismissing her opinions, treating her like she couldn't think for herself. I'd tried to explain that Damien was manipulating her, that this was his pattern, that he used people and discarded them. She'd said I was paranoid, that I couldn't stand seeing Damien succeed while I played it safe, that maybe she was tired of playing it safe too. The words had cut deep. We'd gone to bed angry, sleeping on opposite sides of the mattress, not touching. The 8th visit had happened without my knowledge. I'd found out later when I'd checked our bank account and seen a transfer I hadn't authorized. $50,000, moved from our savings to an external account. I'd confronted Nina that evening. She'd been defensive. Damien needed help. The coin had dipped, and he needed to cover a margin call. He promised he'd pay us back within a month, with interest. You gave him $50,000? Our money? Our house down payment? It's an investment, Cameron, not a gift. We're going to make money on this. We're going to lose everything. That money is gone. Nina, Damien scammed you. Nina's face had hardened. He didn't scam me. He gave me an opportunity that you were too scared to take, and I'm not scared. I'm tired of being scared. Tired of saving every penny. Tired of delaying our lives because you want to be cautious. This is our chance to have more. I'd looked at my wife, this woman I'd been married to for 4 years, and barely recognized her. Damien had gotten to her. Somehow, he'd convinced her that losing $50,000 in a cryptocurrency scam was better than using it to buy a house. How long has he been texting you? Nina had flinched. What? How long has Damien been texting you privately? She'd looked away. Answer me. He messages sometimes. Just friendly conversation. Show me. No. Nina, show me your phone. You don't trust me now? You're acting like you've never seen Damien's manipulations before, like you don't know what he does to people. He's not manipulating me. He's being supportive, more supportive than you've been lately. I'd felt the ground shifting under me. What's that supposed to mean? You've been distant, focused on work, taking me for granted. Damien pays attention, listens to me, makes me feel valued. And you think that's not manipulation? You think he's doing that because he cares about you? He's doing it because he wants our money. Or maybe because he sees something in me that you've forgotten. She'd gone to bed. I'd stayed up, looking at our bank account, seeing the hole where our future had been. $50,000 gone. And the worst part was knowing it was just the beginning. The 9th time Damien had come over, I'd been ready. I'd installed security cameras the week before, small ones, hidden, capturing audio and video of our living room and kitchen. I'd needed evidence of what he was doing, needed proof of the manipulation. Damien had arrived with more flowers, had hugged Nina for too long, had sat close to her on the couch, their knees touching. I'd watched from the home office through the camera feed on my laptop, seen him show her more charts, more projections, seen him touch her hand when explaining complex concepts, seen her lean into him. The investment opportunity is bigger than I thought, Damien had said. But I need more capital to maximize returns. How much more? Another 50,000 would set us up perfectly. We'd have enough to really move the needle when the coin pumps. I can't give you another 50,000. Cameron would never agree. Cameron doesn't have to agree. You're an adult. You can make your own financial decisions. But it's our money. Both of ours. Is it? Damien had leaned closer. Or is it his money that he lets you access when he approves? Because from what you've told me, he makes all the real decisions, controls everything. That's not true. I'd watched my wife defend me half-heartedly, already doubting herself. Damien had placed his hand over hers. Nina, you're beautiful, intelligent, and talented. You deserve a partner who treats you as an equal, who trusts your judgment, who doesn't patronize you. Cameron loves me. I'm sure he does, in his way, but love isn't the same as respect. The words had made me stand up, ready to burst into the room, but I'd forced myself to stay, to watch, to document. And I hate seeing him treat you this way, Damien had continued. You deserve so much more. Someone who sees your value, who appreciates you. Someone like you? Nina had said it jokingly, but there'd been something underneath, something that made my chest tight. Maybe, Damien had said, if circumstances were different, if you weren't married to my brother, maybe I'd show you what it's like to be truly appreciated. Nina had pulled her hand away, laughed, but the laugh had been nervous, flattered. Damien, we're family. Are we? Or are we two people who've been forced into roles we never chose? I'd saved the footage, stopped recording, walked into the living room. Damien had stood smoothly. Cameron. Didn't hear you come in, because you were too busy hitting on my wife. Excuse me? You think I don't know what you're doing? You're trying to steal our money, and when that's not enough, you're trying to steal Nina. Damien had laughed. You're paranoid, man. We were just talking. You were manipulating her. Again, and you'd transferred another 50,000 if I hadn't walked in. Nina had stood. Cameron, this is inappropriate. You're making accusations. I'm stating facts. Damien has been manipulating you for weeks, and you've given him $50,000. Money we needed for our house. Money that's now gone, because I made an investment decision, and you're furious because I didn't ask permission. I'm furious because my brother has been seducing my wife while pretending to offer investment advice. I'd looked at Damien. Get out. And don't come back. Damien had collected his laptop. This is sad, Cameron. Watching you destroy your marriage because of insecurity. But I'll leave. Nina, if you need anything, you have my number. I'd waited until the door closed. Then I'd turned to Nina. We need to talk about what's been happening. There's nothing to talk about. Damien is helping us lose money. That 50,000 is gone, Nina. The coin is worthless. The whole thing is a scam. You don't know that. I do know that. I've researched this extensively, and I've watched Damien manipulate dozens of people the same way. He finds a weakness, exploits it, takes what he wants, and disappears. Nina had looked at me with something like pity. Maybe the weakness is yours. Maybe you're so afraid of risk, so terrified of losing control that you can't see opportunity. Damien believes in something. He's passionate. He's alive. And you're just safe. The word had landed like a knife. Safe. Said like it was an insult. Said like being a stable, reliable husband was a failure. I'd tried to reach for her hand. Nina, I love you. I know you do. But love isn't enough. I need more than safety. I need excitement. Possibility. Everything you're running toward with Damien is an illusion. He's using you. He'll take everything and leave you with nothing. Or maybe, she'd said, he'll take me somewhere you never could. The sentence had hung between us. I'd realized then that Damien hadn't just been trying to steal our money. He'd been trying to steal Nina, and he was succeeding. That night, I'd told Nina I wanted her to cut contact with Damien. She'd refused. I'd told her that if she gave him another $1, I'd file for divorce. She'd said that maybe that was for the best. We'd slept in separate rooms. In the morning, I'd checked our bank account. Empty. Nina had transferred everything. Our entire inheritance, minus the $50,000 she'd already given Damien. $230,000 gone. Moved to an account I didn't recognize. I'd found Nina in the kitchen, drinking coffee like nothing had happened. You took everything. Every dollar we had. You gave it to Damien. I invested it. Without telling me. Without discussing it. Because you would have said no. And I'm tired of your no. Nina, we have nothing now. We have an investment. In a scam. In a Ponzi scheme. In a fraud that's going to collapse and leave us bankrupt. Nina had set down her coffee cup. Damien said you'd react like this. Said you'd try to control me. Try to make me feel stupid. But I'm not stupid, Cameron. I'm brave. Brave? You're being manipulated. Damien has convinced you to give him our entire inheritance. And for what? For the promise of returns that will never come? For attention? For the fantasy that he cares about you? He does care about me, more than you do. I'd felt something break inside me. Nina, I'm your husband. I've loved you since the day we met. I've built a life with you. And you're throwing it away because my brother told you some lies about cryptocurrency and made you feel special. Maybe I want to feel special. Maybe I'm tired of feeling like your responsibility instead of your partner. You are my partner. Then act like it. Stop trying to control me. Stop dismissing what I want. Stop treating me like a child who can't make decisions. I'd looked at my wife, at this person who'd become a stranger in a matter of weeks, and understood that arguing was useless. Damien had won. He'd taken our money and our marriage. The only question was what he'd do next. The answer came 3 days later. I'd been served with a restraining order. Nina had filed a petition claiming I'd been emotionally abusive, controlling her finances, isolating her from family, making her afraid. The petition was full of lies, twisted versions of our arguments, descriptions of behavior that had never happened. But it was all written in legal language, filed with the court, given the weight of official documentation. I'd called Nina immediately. What the hell is this? The restraining order. You're claiming I abused you. Damien helped me file it. He said I needed protection. Protection from what? I've never hurt you, never threatened you. Emotional abuse is still abuse, Cameron, and I'm not going to let you control me anymore. I'd tried to stay calm. Nina, this is insane. We had disagreements about money. That's not abuse. Damien said you'd say that. Said abusers always minimize their behavior. Damien is the one manipulating you. Can't you see that? The restraining order means I have to stay away from our apartment. From you. For how long? The hearing is in 2 weeks. Until then, you're not allowed within 500 feet of me. Nina, please. This is destroying our marriage. Maybe our marriage needed to be destroyed. She'd hung up. I'd stood in my friend's apartment, where I'd been sleeping on the couch since Nina had taken all our money, and understood that Damien's plan was working perfectly. He'd isolated Nina from me, taken our money, convinced her I was abusive, and now he had her to himself. No interference, no voice of reason, just Nina and Damien and the fantasy he'd built. I'd hired a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she'd handled hundreds of domestic violence cases. She'd read the restraining order petition and shaken her head. This is thin, very thin. No evidence of actual violence, just vague accusations of emotional abuse. But the problem is, emotional abuse is hard to disprove. It's subjective. She says you made her feel controlled. You say you were trying to protect your finances. The court has to decide who to believe. How do I prove she's lying? Patricia had leaned back. That's the wrong question. You don't prove she's lying. You prove someone else is manipulating her. And for that, we need evidence of your brother's involvement. I have security footage of him hitting on her, of him manipulating her into giving him money. Good. Get me everything, every text, every email, every video. We'll build a case that this isn't about abuse. It's about fraud. The preliminary hearing had been humiliating. Standing in front of a judge while Nina's lawyer described me as controlling, possessive, emotionally volatile, presenting the restraining order petition like it was fact rather than fabrication. My lawyer had countered with the security footage, with bank records showing Nina had transferred all our money after meeting with Damien, with evidence that this was financial manipulation rather than domestic abuse. The judge had been unmoved. The restraining order stands until the full hearing. Mr. Hartley, you're to stay away from your wife. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. I'd left the courthouse knowing I'd lost the first round. That night, I'd received an email from Damien. The subject line was, "Having dinner with your wife." The message was short. "Nina and I had a wonderful evening. She's finally free from your control, and it's beautiful to watch her bloom. She's exactly the woman I always knew she could be. Confident, independent, empowered. We talked about the future, about possibilities, about what life could look like without you holding her back. By the way, the Crypto Pulse investment is about to pay off. I wasn't wrong about the opportunity. I was just early. And soon, Nina and I will have the kind of wealth you could never provide. Thanks for the inheritance. It's going to fund our new life together." Damien, I'd read the email 5 times, each time feeling sicker. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. Wasn't pretending this was about cryptocurrency. He'd taken my wife, my money, and my life. And he was gloating. I'd called Patricia. She'd told me to save the email. "We'll use it at the hearing." Shows his motive. Shows this isn't about protecting Nina from abuse. This is about your brother stealing your wife and your inheritance. But will a judge see it that way? Patricia had hesitated. "I don't know. Family court is complicated. Judges err on the side of caution when domestic violence is alleged. Even without evidence, even with motives that seem questionable, they often maintain restraining orders just to be safe. So I might lose. You might. And if you do, the restraining order becomes permanent. Damien gets what he wants, and you lose everything." The full hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I'd been living in my friend Trevor's apartment, working remotely, watching my marriage disintegrate from a distance, checking our bank account daily and watching it empty further as Nina transferred money to accounts I couldn't trace. I'd hired a forensic accountant. She'd tracked some of the money to offshore accounts, some to cryptocurrency exchanges. Some had disappeared completely into the labyrinth of digital finance. Getting it back would require proving fraud, going to court, spending years in litigation. Money I didn't have for lawyers I couldn't afford. 2 weeks before the hearing, I'd gotten a call from an unknown number. I'd answered without thinking. The voice on the other end was Damien's. "You should drop the restraining order hearing." "What?" "You heard me. Tell your lawyer you're withdrawing your objection. Let the order stand. Make this easy. I'm not making anything easy for you. You've stolen my wife and my money. I'm fighting this." Damien had laughed. "That's what I figured you'd say. So I need to escalate." "Escalate how?" I'd felt cold. What did he mean? "You're going to get a call soon. From the police. They're going to tell you that Nina is in the hospital. That you assaulted her. That she's pressing charges." "What?" "I haven't been near Nina. I have a restraining order." "Exactly. Which makes it even more serious that you violated it to assault her. The beauty of this plan is that it doesn't matter if you actually did it. There's evidence, bruises, hospital records, witnesses who saw you leaving the scene. Your life is about to be destroyed, Cameron. Criminal charges, jail time. When you get out, Nina will have divorced you, taken whatever assets survived, and moved on with her life. With me. You can't fake evidence of assault." "Sure I can. I've been preparing for weeks. Nina is on board. She'll testify that you've been stalking her, that you broke into her apartment tonight, attacked her, threatened to kill her if she didn't drop the restraining order. The hospital will confirm her injuries. The neighbors will confirm they heard screaming. The physical evidence will match her story. You're insane. I'm creative. There's a difference. And I'm going to win because you never saw me coming. You thought this was about money. It was never just about money. I wanted everything you had. The inheritance, the wife, the life, and I'm going to have it. Unless you withdraw your objection. Go away quietly. Admit you were abusive. Let Nina divorce you without contest. Sign over any remaining assets. Disappear. And if I don't, then tonight, Nina reports the assault. Tomorrow, you're arrested. Next week, you're charged with felony domestic violence. You'll spend the next 2 years fighting criminal charges that will bankrupt you even if you're acquitted. And by the time you're free, I'll have married Nina. I'll have spent your inheritance. I'll have won." I'd hung up, immediately called Patricia. She'd answered groggily. "This better be life or death." "It is." Damien just called. "He's planning to frame me for assaulting Nina." "Tonight, fabricate evidence, hospital records, witnesses. He wants me to drop the restraining order hearing or he'll destroy my life. Patricia had been quiet. Then, "Where are you right now?" "Trevor's apartment." "Stay there. Don't leave. Don't go anywhere near Nina or your old apartment. I'm calling a colleague who does criminal defense. We need to get ahead of this. But what if he's already done it? What if Nina's already at the hospital? Then we prove you were never there. Alibi, timeline, evidence. But Cameron, if he's really willing to fabricate evidence, this is going to be ugly." I'd stayed at Trevor's apartment, paced, checked my phone constantly. At 2:47 a.m., the doorbell had rung. The officers had been professional but firm. We'd been called about an assault at this address. Someone reported screaming. "That's impossible. I've been here all night. My friend Trevor can confirm." "Where is your friend?" "Asleep in his bedroom. We'd like to speak with him, and we need to check the apartment." "For what?" "To make sure everyone's safe." They'd walked through Trevor's apartment while I'd woken him up. Trevor had confirmed I'd been there since 9 p.m. We'd ordered pizza, watched basketball, gone to bed around midnight. I'd never left. The officers had seemed satisfied, asked a few more questions, then one of them had gotten a call on his radio. His expression had changed. "Mr. Hartley, we're going to need you to come with us." "Why?" "What's happening? Your wife has reported an assault. She's at the hospital. She claims you broke into her apartment and attacked her. I've been here all night. Trevor just confirmed that. Sir, we still need to bring you in for questioning. Am I under arrest?" "Not yet, but we need to sort this out." I'd looked at Trevor. He'd nodded. "Call Patricia. Tell her what happened. I'd gone with the police, sat in an interrogation room for 3 hours while they'd pieced together a timeline. Nina's story was detailed. She'd claimed I'd shown up at her apartment around 3 a.m., pounded on the door. When she'd opened it, I'd forced my way in. We'd argued about the restraining order. The argument had escalated. I'd grabbed her, shook her, threw her against the wall. She'd screamed. Neighbors had called the police. I'd fled before they'd arrived. She'd driven herself to the hospital. The detective interviewing me had been skeptical but thorough. "Your friend confirms you were at his apartment. We have no evidence placing you at your wife's apartment. No witnesses saw you there. The timeline doesn't work. But your wife is insistent. She's given a detailed statement. She has injuries consistent with assault. So, where does that leave me?" The detective had shrugged. "Either your wife is lying, or someone else assaulted her and she's blaming you. Either way, this is complicated." I'd told him about Damien, about the phone call threatening to frame me, about the inheritance, the manipulation, the plan to steal Nina. The detective had taken notes, but his expression had said he'd heard crazier stories that turned out to be true. "We'll investigate. Talk to your brother. But Mr. Hartley, even if you're innocent of the assault, you've still got the restraining order violation to deal with. Your wife claims you were at her apartment. That's a violation regardless of what happened. I was never there. Then we need to prove that." They'd released me 6 hours later. No charges filed yet, but the investigation was ongoing. Patricia had been waiting outside the police station. "This is exactly what your brother said would happen. He's framing you. The problem is, he's doing a good job." Nina went to the hospital. She has real injuries, real documentation. Either she injured herself or Damien did it. Either way, she's committed to the story. What do we do? Patricia had handed me a folder. "We go on offense. I've filed a motion to compel Nina's phone records. Her text messages with Damien will show the coordination. We'll prove this is fraud. But that takes time. And in the meantime, Damien has accomplished what he wanted. The assault accusation will hang over you even if you're never charged. The restraining order hearing is now complicated by a criminal investigation. Nina looks like a victim. You look like an abuser. We've lost the narrative. How do we get it back? Evidence. Hard evidence that Damien orchestrated this. And I think I know where to find it." Patricia had explained her plan. Damien was arrogant. Criminals who think they're smart often documented their crimes, kept records, bragged. If Damien had been messaging Nina about the plan, those messages existed. If he'd coordinated the fake assault, there'd be evidence. We just needed to find it. The hearing had been postponed while the assault investigation continued, which meant more weeks of living in limbo, more weeks of Damien having access to Nina, more weeks of my life being destroyed. I'd started following Damien. carefully from a distance, documenting everywhere he went. He'd been living large: new car, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, spending the inheritance like it would never run out. He'd been meeting with Nina regularly: lunch dates, dinners, late nights at her apartment. The relationship wasn't even hidden anymore. They were together, publicly. My brother and my wife. I'd taken photos, documented everything, sent it all to Patricia. She'd filed motions, requested depositions, built a case. But legal proceedings moved slowly, and Damien's plan was working fast. 3 weeks after the fake assault, I'd received divorce papers. Nina was filing on grounds of emotional abuse, citing the restraining order and the assault investigation as evidence. She wanted everything: the remaining assets, exclusive rights to our apartment, spousal support. The papers had been delivered by Damien. He'd handed them to me outside Trevor's apartment building with a smile. "Congratulations on your divorce. I hear it's going to be expensive. You orchestrated this entire thing. Every detail. The manipulation, the fraud, the false accusations. Did I? Or did I just give Nina the courage to leave an abusive marriage? You convinced my wife to destroy our life together so you could steal our inheritance. Now that's a conspiracy theory, but let's say, hypothetically, that I did do all those things. What are you going to do about it? Sue me? With what money? You're broke, Cameron. Nina has the inheritance. I have access to the inheritance through Nina. You have nothing. You've lost everything. And the beautiful part is, you did it to yourself. If you just invested in CryptoPulse like I asked, we'd all be rich. You could have helped your brother instead of fighting him. But you chose to be selfish. So I chose to take what should have been offered freely. I'd felt rage building. You destroyed my marriage, broke up my family, framed me for a crime I didn't commit. And you think you're the victim? Damien had leaned closer. I don't think I'm the victim. I know I'm the winner. And you're the cautionary tale. The guy who played it safe and lost everything anyway. How's that working out for you? I'd started toward him. Damien had backed away, holding up his phone. Careful, I'm recording. Any physical contact, any threat, and I'll have more evidence of your violent tendencies. Nina needs protection from people like you. He'd walked away laughing. I'd stood on the sidewalk, shaking with anger, knowing he was right. I had nothing. No money, no wife, no home. Just debt and accusations, and a brother who'd systematically destroyed me. But I had something Damien didn't expect. I had Patricia, and Patricia had just gotten a subpoena approved for Damien's financial records. 2 days later, she'd called me with news. I found it. Found what? The proof. Damien's cryptocurrency investment was fake. CryptoPulse is real, but he never actually invested in it. He created fake accounts, fake balance sheets, fake transaction records, showed them to Nina to convince her to give him money, but the money never went into cryptocurrency. It went into his personal accounts. He's been spending your inheritance on himself while pretending to invest it. Can we prove it? We can prove it. I have bank records showing the money trail. It's all there, which means Nina's been defrauded too. We can file criminal charges, we can sue for recovery, and we can blow up his entire narrative. But there's more. What? I found text messages between Damien and Nina, planning the assault. She sent him photos of makeup techniques for creating fake bruises. He sent her a script for what to tell the police. They coordinated everything. Nina knew it was fake. She helped him frame you. I'd felt something crack inside me. She knew? She wasn't manipulated? Nina knew. She's complicit. This wasn't Damien manipulating a vulnerable woman. This was both of them conspiring to destroy you. I'd sat down heavily. Why would she do this? Patricia had been quiet. Then, the messages suggest she's been having an affair with Damien for months, since before the inheritance. This wasn't opportunistic. It was premeditated. They planned this together. The timeline had rearranged itself in my mind. Nina hadn't been seduced by Damien. She'd been working with him. The entire time I'd been trying to protect her, trying to save our marriage. She'd been conspiring with my brother to rob me. Everything had been a lie. How far back? 6 months, at least. Maybe longer. The messages reference conversations about getting you to invest in cryptocurrency, about what to do if you refused, about how to access your inheritance. They'd mapped it out, every contingency. And when you wouldn't cooperate, they escalated to the restraining order and false assault. Jesus. Patricia's voice had softened. I'm sorry, Cameron. I know this is devastating, but it also means we can fight back. This is fraud, conspiracy, perjury. Both of them are going to face serious criminal charges. What do? We go to the police, show them the evidence, get the assault charges against you dropped, get charges filed against them. Then we sue for recovery of your inheritance. It won't be fast, but we'll win. I'd authorized her to file everything. The next day, police had arrested Damien and Nina, both charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, filing a false police report, and perjury. The arrest had been public. Neighbors had watched as they'd been handcuffed and put into separate patrol cars. Nina had been crying. Damien had been stone-faced. I'd watched from across the street, feeling nothing. The trial had taken 8 months. During that time, I'd rebuilt my life, moved into a new apartment, focused on work, started therapy to process the betrayal. Watched from a distance as Nina and Damien's lies unraveled publicly. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages coordinating the fake assault, bank records showing the fraud, testimony from the forensic accountant explaining how Damien had never invested in cryptocurrency, expert analysis of the fake bruises Nina had created. The jury had deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Damien had been sentenced to 6 years in prison. Nina had gotten 4 years. I'd attended the sentencing hearing, watched my ex-wife and my brother stand before the judge and hear their sentences. Neither had looked at me. The judge had spoken about betrayal of trust, about the serious nature of false accusations, about how their actions had nearly destroyed an innocent man's life. Then she'd ordered restitution. They'd have to pay back every dollar of the inheritance, with interest. The money had started coming back in increments, garnished from their prison wages, seized from accounts they'd tried to hide, recovered from assets they'd purchased. It would take years to get it all back. But it was coming. I'd sold our old apartment, too many bad memories. The new place was smaller but mine, completely mine. No ghosts, no lies, just space that belonged to me. I'd started dating again, carefully. Trust was hard after Nina, but I was learning. Patricia had become a friend. We'd gotten dinner occasionally, talked about the case, about life, about recovery from betrayal. She'd said something during one of those dinners that stuck with me. You were targeted by 2 people who saw you as a resource rather than a person. That's not a reflection on you. That's a reflection on them. Some people view relationships as transactional. They calculate what they can extract. You're not like that, which is why you were vulnerable. But it's also why you'll recover. People like you build real things. People like them just take. I'd thought about that a lot. About the difference between building and taking. About how Damien had spent his life looking for shortcuts, for schemes, for ways to get rich without working. About how Nina had been seduced by that fantasy. About how they'd both ended up with nothing. While I'd been slow and steady and cautious, and I'd survived. 2 years after the arrests, I'd received a letter from Nina, written from prison, apologizing, explaining that she'd been confused, unhappy, seduced by Damien's promises, that she'd made terrible choices, that she was sorry, that she hoped someday I could forgive her. I'd read the letter once, then I'd thrown it away. Some things didn't deserve forgiveness. Some betrayals were too complete. The inheritance had been fully recovered. With interest, I'd ended up with more than the original amount. I'd used it to buy a house, small, suburban, exactly what Nina had mocked. And it was perfect. My house, my life, my future. Nobody could take it from me. Damien would be released in 4 more years, Nina in 2. I'd gotten a restraining order against both of them. When they got out, they'd be required to stay away from me. Not that I needed the legal protection. I had something better. I had a life they couldn't touch, a future they couldn't steal, and the knowledge that their conspiracy had destroyed them far more completely than it had ever hurt me. 3 years after everything fell apart, I met someone. Her name was Lisa, and she was nothing like Nina. Steady, honest, transparent. She knew my history. I'd told her everything on our 3rd date. Expected her to run. Instead, she'd said, "You survived something that would have broken most people. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." We'd been dating for 6 months when Damien was released from prison. I'd gotten the notification, felt nothing. He was someone else's problem now, someone else's cautionary tale. My life had moved on. Last month, I'd proposed to Lisa. She'd said yes. We'd set a date for next spring. Small wedding, just close friends and family. My family, the one I'd chosen. not the one I'd been born into. Yesterday, I'd received an email from Damien. First contact since his release. The subject line was, "I'm sorry." I'd hovered over the delete button for a long moment. Then I'd opened it, just to see. The message was long, apologetic, explaining that prison had given him time to reflect, that he understood now what he'd done, how he'd destroyed our relationship, how he'd hurt me, how he'd thrown away his life for money that was gone. He'd mentioned that Nina had left prison first, violated her parole within weeks, was back inside, said they'd both paid the price for their greed, said he hoped someday we could rebuild. I'd read it twice. Then I'd hit delete. Some bridges once burned, stayed burned. Some relationships, once poisoned, couldn't be healed. Damien had made his choices. He'd face his consequences, and I'd move forward with mine. This morning, I'd driven past our old apartment, the place where Nina and I had lived, where Damien had planted his seeds of destruction, where my old life had ended. Someone else lived there now. New curtains in the windows, different car in the driveway. The building looked the same but meant nothing to me anymore. I'd kept driving, toward my house, toward Lisa, toward a future that was mine. Clean and honest and real. The kind of future you built slowly, the kind that lasted, the kind that no one could steal. Because I'd learned the hard truth. Trust carefully, protect what matters, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Damien had shown me. I'd just been too loyal to see it. But I saw it now, and I'd never be blind again. 5 years after the police showed up at my door, I stood at my wedding to Lisa, surrounded by friends who'd proven their loyalty. Patricia was there, my lawyer-turned-friend. Trevor, who'd given me a place to stay. Colleagues who'd supported me through the scandal. Real people. Honest people. The kind you built a life with. Damien and Nina were both in prison, serving extended sentences for parole violations. The inheritance was mine, safe in accounts they'd never touch. My house was paid off. My future was clear. And when I kissed my bride, I thought about how Damien had tried to destroy everything, and instead had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Some people will take everything if you let them. But if you stand firm, if you fight back, if you refuse to be broken, you don't just survive, you win. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.